Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of The Planet Crafter. So this recently went into 1.0, we also did an overview, a few episodes, that sort of stuff, and I had a brief look at it in early access, but it was quite early at the time, so I kind of let it sit. For those not across it, the way I do reviews, I only really have one objective standard that I hold games to, which is for every $5 that I give a game, I expect that it gives me an hour of solid gameplay back. Now this is an intentionally low bar because that's the point. It is a standard across games and across price points. If the game can't pass that, that's a value problem, and beyond that any extra hours played is bonus. So currently Planet Crafter is going for $35 Australian or thereabouts, which would be 7 hours, and I've put that in and I've enjoyed every second of it. In fact, the hours have disappeared as I've been playing it, and I'm very much looking forward to, in my own time further beyond this review, putting more into it. This is addicting as anything that you could possibly ask for. So yes, is it worth your time, worth your money? Without a doubt. And where I currently am and the progress that I've made, it still feels like I'm just scratching the tip. There's more and more stuff opening up. Recently I've opened up essentially, actually I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's give you the science report. What is this game? Well, broadly speaking, it is a planet terraforming game set in the first-person perspective, which in and of itself is a little bit unusual. It's got some light crafting and survival elements that you would see in other genres, but make no mistake, what this game really is it's the next step in idle clickers or idle games or whatever you want to call them. You can try and untangle the two terms, they usually come as a package deal, but this is what I would argue is the next step forward in idle. Incremental is the other term that you hear as well, because idle is probably not the best term. You're very proactive in this game, you're never really sitting still. But it's drip feeding you upgrades, you're trying to balance essentially core statistics like heat, oxygen, pressure in the environment. So these terraforming milestones, and they earn you terraforming index points. You have this essentially score going up at any given time. And as they hit certain milestones, like you get X pressure, you will unlock something else that you can build, whether it's a personal upgrade for your suit or if it's another building or, you know, a tier 3 heater to generate more heat, that sort of thing. And the nuance comes in that you have to balance all these line items fairly evenly to get the ever-rising float of new upgrades and new tech. It is a ridiculously well-considered and addicting loop, and you're never going to be idle and you're never going to be sitting there going, what do I do next? It's more a case of, here's 5 different things that I should be doing and I need to do, and once you do one of them, there's going to be 5 more as well. It doesn't actually feel oppressive or anything like that. Like, as far as Doom situations, you can run out of oxygen is probably the most common thing, but you've got food and water as well. And even if you die, you just drop a box of half your crap, the other half makes it back to base. So arguably you could probably tactically die, but you can just go back and pick up your stuff and bring it back. So it's not too oppressive as far as the penalties, but there's still penalties for just disregarding your oxygen full stop. It works really well. Now look, I don't particularly want to spoil or anything like that, but there are evolutionary components to the game that present themselves. Like, the first big thing is getting a blue sky environment, and it's a really clever gameplay design feedback loop that you can see in this world going from a dust bowl to a lush paradise. You can sort of see it evolve in front of you, and it's very cool. It's a great way to reward a player without it being a +2 fucking battle axe or 2% in lightning resistance or something, right? This is actual satisfying feedback. I've recently, in the past few hours, unlocked like a bio lab, and that in itself has unlocked another entire tree of plant life, insects, you know, so you've got this sort of biodiversity component to the index now as well. So I'm running around spreading grass all over the place. We've got rain starting to happen on my planet. Water is pooling, that sort of thing. And there's all sorts of clever, like, I don't want to necessarily say Metroidvania-esque, but like there's areas that are cordoned off by frozen chunks of ice, like little glaciers. And once you hit a certain temperature threshold in the environment, that will melt and it will open up the map a bit more. So you're just constantly poking and prodding, and this is why I say it's incremental, because it is, but instead of just left clicking and not really having a gameplay loop, you're very constantly busy work, building your base, twisting and tweaking and doing all sorts of stuff along the way. Look, and look, if I were to say a negative or speak against it or whatever, yes, it's a grind, but I would argue a healthy grind. There's good fats and there's bad fats, right? And when people say grind, 99% of the time, it's kind of bad, right? And there are some people that can accept it, or maybe they just take it on the chin. Like, I doubt that people love the grind in World of Warcraft. I feel like maybe they enjoy the lore or the combat or the world building or whatever, and the grind's kind of a necessary evil. Not that I'm going after World of Warcraft or anything like that, but, you know, go collect 10 boar pelts in the forest is a little bit on the nose for me. But this is a good example of getting that loop right, where you're never really grinding more than one thing ever. Now, you can go out and do little sort of pick up bits and pieces off the ground. Here, I'm going to go pick up some iron and cobalt and that, and just fill your inventory and bring it back. And occasionally you will do that. But again, if that was what the game expected you to do ad nauseum, you'd uninstall it after an hour. It'd be infuriating. So that option's there, and you do it occasionally. But generally speaking, it's always mini objective driven. I want to buy a new heater or a new oxygenator or whatever they bloody call it. Like, it grows plants to generate oxygen. I need to extend my base. That sort of thing. The moment to moment is really punchy. And like I said, I'm harping on it because from a gameplay design perspective, it's one of those things. When something's being done right, often people don't see it. And I guess I'm cursed with doing this as a job because it's screamingly brilliant how simple, like at first blush, the UI, the interface, everything about this game, there's a lot of jank to it, right? But underneath the hood, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the presentation, but I could see some people maybe turning their nose up. But under the hood, it is really well considered. Moment to moment, like the devs have actually taken the time to think about what you're doing every 30 seconds and if the player's getting bored or not. So yes, it's an absolute dopamine drip feed and an example of a good grind. However, now that it's sort of getting into that mid to end game for me and it's asking for more rare resources, the grind is starting to turn up to that end. And you could probably do a whole video on this. There's probably a sunk cost component to it. Like, the game has convinced me, you know, it's sold itself. I love it. I've put all these hours in. I'm committed. I'm invested, right? So when it starts saying, well, we're going to make the grind a bit much, you will give it the time of day because it's kind of earned your goodwill through the previous hours. But at the moment, I've got multiple little satellite bases all over the place that roughly oxygen length. So I run from them. But it does get to a point like, oh God, where did I build the biolab? Where did I build the bloody rocket pad? So I need to launch this asteroid to create a bloody deflection to up my heat. And it's one of those things, oh, maybe I need osmium now. Where was that again? You know, there is fun in the exploration and all that, but it does seem to start to skew towards backwards and forth. Now, who knows? The game is so clever and innovative, and like I said, I haven't finished it. That's not really how these reviews go. It's more about rendering a fair verdict against the price paid. But who knows? Maybe they come up with fast travel later on, or vehicles or something like that to sort of mitigate against that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is interesting. Like, if you hold my feet to the fire and go, name a negative, Scarlet, I'll be like, well, you know, it is starting to become a little bit of a run back and forth thing as it spreads the more end-game resources farther and farther apart. But that is absolutely third-tier issues. This game is really good. Apparently you can play it multiplayer. I could see that being a lot of fun, but I've played it absolutely mainlined at single player, and it was almost difficult to put down to render this review. So the game's great. It's not super oppressive. Dare I say, you could say casual, but it is one of those things that an hour will go by in a blink while you're crunching numbers and figuring out what I need next and sort of, well, I shouldn't say crunching numbers. It's less about mathing things out, but it's more about picking the path through. Like, what do I need the most right now? Do I need to increase the oxygen rate? Do I need to build more drills for pressure? Maybe I should be using more grass spreaders to try and get that biodiversity up. It's like you have these options and you have to navigate it. And there's something just that really ticks that logistical mind part, but without requiring a bloody engineering degree. Anyway, that's my review of Planet Crafter. You should absolutely check it out if you're even remotely interested in this sort of stuff. But if you're looking at it and it might seem out of your wheelhouse, it might still be worth dipping your toes. It's doing things really different, and I almost wouldn't put it in the survival craft category. Again, closer to more an incremental thing. So if you bounce off games, your Ark and even your Rust or all these other sort of games which are a little bit more competitive and a little bit more about hardcore base building, that's not really what's going on here. And the best way to find out is to try it out for yourself. Anyway, I don't need to waffle and go around in circles. Game's great. Love it to bits. Team might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.